So I'm in the country, and right now I hear a helicopter, cars, motorcycles, and a jet boat. We went to the woods for quietness, and we're being invaded. Now the reason for this video is not to prove that semi-automatic weapons aren't as effective as traditional weapons, but it is to prove that inexperienced criminals aren't going to be much more effective with semi-automatic as they are with other kinds of rifles. That isn't to say that they might have a slight advantage by just throwing as many bullets as possible opposed to trying to do that with a lever action, but it is to show that semi-automatic weapons aren't the killing machines that liberal media has made them out to be. So in a previous Rolling Stones video I did, which I might take down because I don't quite like it the way I produced it, they made the argument that the AR-15 is the all-American killer because in a Army field manual of some sorts they said that semi-automatic fire is the best kind of fire, or something along that line of thinking. Now it's true that semi-automatic fire can be the most effective form of firing because it's not as inaccurate as fully automatic where, you know, you hold down the trigger and the gun goes pop, 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 pop. So what people usually think of semi-automatic fire is each time you pull the trigger, the gun fires. So you don't have to worry about cocking the gun or anything. This is obviously effective because you can control the rate of fire, but yet not have to be slowed down by any other reload times. Now the point I want to make is that this story that liberal media tries to paint, that some guy can just go into an American gun shop, buy an AR-15, and then go and shoot up an orphanage, is not only false, but it's not going to really change no matter what gun he buys. Because if it's a woefully inexperienced criminal who's not going to be blocked by a background check, he's not going to know how to shoot a semi-automatic rifle with the true effectiveness of a semi-automatic rifle. He's going to have to wait. He's probably going to be fumbling with the gun a bit, but even if he's experienced as me, and I would be like an experienced amateur, I've been around guns but ain't really a pro, he's probably not going to hit much more than he would with a lot of traditional, what we consider traditional rifles, because semi-automatic fire has actually been around for a long time. Now again, when we think of semi-automatic fire, we think of bang, bang, bang. Something a lot like this, where this is a pistol obviously, but you put it in the magazine and you pull the trigger, and no matter how, my finger's not on the trigger by the way, no matter how many times you pull the trigger, it goes off. Now holding down the trigger would be a fully automatic rifle or a machine gun or a fully automatic pistol. I believe Glock makes something like that. Now currently full auto is actually very hard to come by in America because you need a special license, which was originally passed like in the 1920s to curb a major crime spike. In recent years people have called for the dismantling of that act because fully automatic weapons are actually so hard to control that, again, semi-automatic fire is one of the best forms of fire, so fully automatic weapons are actually more of a danger to the user than if they were used in mass shootings. So if you legalize that and train people well, like most Americans know, typical gun safety, figure off the trigger and all that, I don't think it would be much of a problem if even fully automatic weapons were legal. But anyways, back to semi-automatic. Even in the 1800s, we had some double action revolvers. Now this isn't an 1800 replica, but this is a revolver. We all know revolver. Now originally revolvers were single action, which means you had to cock it and you had to cock it each time you fired. Double action is, it basically cocks itself with every time you pull the trigger. Now that's very similar to semi-automatic because no matter how many times you pull the trigger, this thing's going to fire. So even in the 1800s we had semi-automatic weapons, and there's actually ones that would be considered assault weapons by proposed law. Even if you went by what liberals bring up as assault weapons, there are, I believe they're belt fed, they're very unique kinds of rifles that were made in the 1800s that hold 80 rounds and are semi-automatic. And also there are rifles that use this same pistol technology because basically a rifle is this, usually with a higher caliber, a bigger barrel, and a stock. So if this was like, say, a 9mm, I put a stock and a 16-inch barrel on it, people would call that a carbine. And if this had more than 10 rounds in it, some people would call it an assault weapon, which there are revolvers that hold more than the standard 6-shooter. There are ones that hold 10 rounds. There are even ones that hold 20-something rounds and have a very unique mechanism. So again, when we talk about assault weapons, people always assume big scary rifles, but even pistols that typically hold more than 10 rounds in modern days, such as a Glock, could be considered assault weapons just by putting a stock on them. And I'm sure after you ban the semi-automatic rifles, they'll come after the semi-automatic pistols, which date back over a century. The reason I'm talking about all this is because even the ban doesn't make sense, because no matter what happens, that people are going to find a way around it, because this technology has been around for many, 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 many years. There are people on YouTube you can find making homemade semi-automatic weapons, be it very difficult. And if everyone ends up being disarmed to try to stop all gun violence, there's no one around to stop the person who manages to make himself or find a gun. So in this situation, let's say we banned assault weapons, we banned semi-automatic, double-action revolvers never existed, or we banned those as well, and the traditional rifles that liberals say that we are allowed to have, even though in every other country they've banned them slowly and slowly. That's why we don't compromise on gun control, because we can see other countries, you say you're not going to take them away, and then in Ireland, you have to be part of a gun club and you can't shoot in self-defense. In Australia, they end up forcing everyone into a mandatory buyback, which is basically a ban. We keep compromising and you keep going. There's no stop. And that's why we don't compromise anymore. But let's say we did compromise and we banned assault weapons and they let us keep our lever action and bolt action rifles. Could you fire a single action rifle or pistol just as fast as an assault weapon? If you were an inexperienced person who managed to walk into a gun store and walk out 5 minutes later with a gun and you were intent on killing people, which also has to be questioned, because most of the gun violence in America, the statistics show that is with a pistol, and I think most of that is gang related or involving drugs and stuff, and most of those people, 93% of them actually, obtain those guns illegally. But let's also ignore that. Most of those people also have done drugs, and if they've been caught, they have a felony, which makes it illegal for them to purchase a firearm legally. So once again, what we have on the books is already working. Now I know saying that sounds crazy, but if you look at the statistics, we've actually dropped quite a lot in gun violence since the 90s, which is odd because the amount of guns in this country has skyrocketed along with people concealed carrying. Anyways, on to my point. Can a inexperienced person with a semi-automatic rifle hit a target, a target that you actually have to focus on and actually hit? Can they hit it any quicker than a lever action? Now, yes, I have glasses on my head and they're recording this epidemic. I'm using Ruger 1022 instead of an AR-15 because I'll be shooting at steel, which shooting at steel this close would be kind of dangerous, but if I stood 50 yards back, I don't believe most mass shootings are at that distance. So I have two targets that are about 7 feet apart. Let's see how quick I can hit them with a semi-automatic rifle. Now if you saw there, I missed the first shot, and that is one advantage of the semi-automatic rifle, because you can have quick follow-up shots. Now that also means you're running out of ammo quicker, and at one point you're going to have to reload. Obviously, all of this could be prevented if the second target started shooting at me while I was attempting to take them both out. And whether you believe in that or not, that's why I believe gun crime has been dropping as concealed permits grow. Now this is my Winchester 30-30. Now I was going to do this with the 30-30 and 10-22. However, the 30-30 bullets are also slightly copper plated, which would be dangerous to fire this close at steel. So what I'm going to do instead is fire my dad's pump action 22, which would be more fair in all honesty because they're both 22s. And then I'm going to fire at a distance of 50 yards the AR-15 and 30-30 and see if I can hit them any quicker. Okay, pump action. This means it's how you cock it, then you have to pull the trigger. This, however, might be illegal in California because it holds up to like 15 rounds. But right now only 3 are loaded in it. Next, I'm going to step back and we'll try out the scary rifle. Rolling Stones told me this was the all-American killer on their front page. I mean, it was made in the USA. Okay, so I got the AR-15 and the target's way out there. I'm going to try to hit both the target and the can from this distance because this is as far back as I have to stand. And we'll see if I can shoot any quicker than I can with the 30-30, which 30-30 is actually more of a long distance round, so this might be slightly unfair, but I'll try to shoot as quick as possible. I loaded 10 rounds into the 30 round steel magazine I'm using, which means if I miss once, I'll just go crazy. Granted, this isn't a long distance, I just don't like magpul sights. Firing! Firing! You guys might find this funny. So, I shot the steel with the 30-30. We don't have it hooked up to a chain or anything. This is actually an old construction thingy. I used to know the name and I forgot it already, that we just got it onto. But that's the rope. The AR didn't destroy it, but the 30-30 like cleanly ripped, like it tore the rope. You know, like that. It's crazy. But the 30-30 Winchester lever action obviously shoots a bigger round than the 223 AR-15. So in conclusion, semi-automatic rifles do have many perks. That's why we use them so often. Plus, they're a lot funner to shoot because you don't have to cock it every time you shoot. But I don't think it's the contributing factor to these mass shootings, because as we saw, crime committed with a firearm has actually gone down. And also, that 30,000, 60% of that 30,000 is suicides, but we won't get into that right now either. These mass shootings, I don't think are an assault weapon problem. I think it's a moral problem. It's not the gun's fault, it's bad people who do bad things. And when you regulate these things, bad people, 93%, are just going to gain them illegally. So instead, let us defend ourselves against any form of tyranny, instead of taking away our rights just to attempt to stop bad people from doing bad things. Maybe we can help stop them, or maybe we could teach people not to kill each other, instead of just saying, oh, well, if guns exist, then people will do bad things.